What a week. Today on CityCast Las Vegas, I'm joined by my co-host David Figler and contributor Andrew Corrali, publisher of thelist.vegas. And we're getting into the week of news. We'll be talking about the Huntridge Theater's revival, the never-ending Tony Hsieh saga, and whether Clark County should okay an apartment rooftop beer garden. It's Friday, April 7th. I'm Vogue Robinson, and here's what Las Vegas is talking about. Good morning, David. Good morning, Andrew. How are y'all?
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are y'all doing?
Excellent. Very excited. Happy spring.
Friday. I mean, do you need to say more? Friday in Vegas.
Only for some.
True.
So speaking of Fridays, and I'm sure probably some of your weekends were spent at this lovely location, but let's talk about the Huntridge Theater relighting tonight. Andrew, give us the backstory on the Huntridge Theater.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So tonight, 5:30, they are relighting the sign and marquee at the historic Huntridge Theater. They're turning it into, kind of a big event. They're going to have 3 live bands, some food trucks, and a really cool photo exhibit in the lobby of 90s era punk show photos, many of them from the Huntridge by longtime local photographer Mike Hill. I've seen the photos. They're just surging with like youthful energy. The meta sort of mood around this event is, this is sort of kicking off the long-term renovation of the Huntridge, which was purchased by Jay Dapper, commercial real estate developer, in March of 2021. And the grand plan is to renovate it, refurbish it, and add on to it with an opening date probably 2024. The renovation's got a $22 million price tag. I guess the big question is, is it for real this time?
Is it
or
really
is
gonna
this,
happen?
Are we just is this Lucy's football where we're gearing up to, kick it again, only for it to be swiped away as it has in the past?
Oh, good grief.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of conversation about the hope and despair of the Huntridge Theater. It has a very long and rich and troubled history. It was sort of had to be pulled out of this legal and financial limbo to get it in a place where it could actually, be redeveloped. Question is Jay Dapper the person to do it? I'm actually pretty optimistic for various reasons. Jay Dapper has a shocking history of actually doing what he says he's going to do. So that's kind of a point in his favor. He's a native who actually went to Huntridge Theater shows back in the day. So I feel like he's got, that extra emotional oomph that will entail some personal investment. And and he's a commercial real estate developer, so he probably knows a thing or two about redeveloping properties. So count me as optimistic and hopeful. What do you guys think?
Well, I also am going to file myself under hopeful and optimistic. Jay Dapper is a developer who's been doing a lot of projects in the downtown area, although he's been doing a lot of projects all over the valley, and he might be stretched a little thin. Some of Jay Dapper projects go really quick. Some seem to linger for a long time. Huntridge probably in that latter category. The Huntridge has a lot of history in this community. And for people who are new to the community or newer to the community, it would probably shock them how far back it goes. It starts in wartime, 1940s. Yep. It opened up as, just one of those famed movie palaces. It was very ornate inside and out. It was a big deal, especially when there was such a small population. Over the years, it took a lot of different twists and turns. It was one of the first places where they desegregated for viewers of the movies that were there. And so way before Las Vegas kind of came on, which was, as listeners to the podcast will know, came very late in the civil rights movement, the Huntridge Theater kind of stood alone on that. They've been through a lot of different hands. I recall going there in the early 70s, watching kiddie shows, movies of the day. I think I saw Escape from Witch Mountain there or something like that. Yeah. And then kind of went through a down period, resurged in the early 90s with the Lenz family, maybe the late 80s, early 90s. and became kind of a haven for a lot of music shows. I think Andrew's band played there too, or Andrew definitely went to a lot of shows there. I remember seeing him there a lot. And then the roof
Andrew,
caved
you had
in.
a band?
I
What?
saw David in the pit.
In the pit. In the pit.
Yeah, Huntridge, to a whole generation of Las Vegans, it is, known and beloved for its tenure in the 90s as indie, punk, rock central. And one interesting thing to me is that there are actually going to be 4 venues inside the refurbished Huntridge. So the vision is to have, the main theater and then an off-Broadway space and then 2 other small programming spaces, which are going to be built on. So a total of 4 venues, which to me is a lot of space to program. And Vogue, you're a performer, you're a poet, and you're an artist. What do you want to see happening at the Huntridge in its new era?
And what I love too is that there's talk of an art gallery in that space. So he's going to use some of the old, like the signage and other things like that to really be part of what brings you into the space and gives you that understanding that there's love for the history, love for the building, love for the community.
Mhm.
So boom, that's already checked. And I think when I think about shows, I think it's hard to say. I think he should stay in the vein of ask the community what they want to see. But I think if it brings back that punk feel, especially simultaneously as we're getting the punk rock museum, I think that'll be a really great like springboard. That's easy marketing. And then I think, I want poetry everywhere. that's just
Nothing
the nature
wrong
of
with
my
that.
feelings.
And I think they're going to emphasize a lot of theater, live theater.
Yeah.
They have some programming coming from a company that has some roots in New York.
Yeah, Soho Playhouse. Yep.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see what they can do in the scene.
Yeah, whatever they program, I'm starting a mosh pit no matter what.
There you go. I noticed that they said, that they're going to be one of the only ones to have off Broadway theater, and I was like, is that true? Do I not understand the definition of off Broadway theater, David?
Yeah, I think that's a loosey definition, but
Okay.
Look, any new programming is great, and I'm going to not drop this pun. Homage pit.
Do you do yoga? Because that's a bit of a stretch.
Ooh, moving on. So I know y'all are both veterans of that downtown punk music scene. I guess like in a one sentimental memory or one sentimental thought around the Huntridge. Like what did the original Huntridge mean to Vegas, and one way that they can continue kind of paying homage to what that space means? What do y'all think?
For me, it was a beacon of all ages entertainment in a town that was, built for adults. So when we started going in the 90s, it was a welcoming space where it was no muss, no fuss, just a no frills punk rock venue where you could, just see some amazing bands in this, crusty old theater. So I have some, countless memories of great shows. One of my favorites, I saw Sonic Youth there in 93. At the time, I thought I was having sort of like this, mind melting religious experience. I was probably just like, losing my hearing, but just being scoured in that transcendent guitar noise was always, a wonderful thing to occur at the Huntridge Theater.
One of my first band appearances of the mighty but instantly forgettable Tippy Elvis Band was that we did play a Huntridge benefit show, and there were a lot of benefit shows that occurred at the Huntridge during that time. I actually have one really fun memory in the nooks and crannies. We went to backstage to see a show called Bob Log, who's a great indie performer. My friends were very excited to meet Bob Log, and his drummer at the time was somebody many years earlier was a resident at my dorm where I was the RA, and I had him kicked out for misbehavior. And we walked in and he was just like, "You dick!" It was the best. So yeah, the Huntridge has lots of great memories, and it'll be interesting. And, being in that old Huntridge neighborhood and right across from the troublesome and problematic Circle Park, which the neighbors have been like dealing with for a really long time. It'll be interesting if that has a positive impact to get that green space back going in downtown Las Vegas too.
Yeah, I love that. And I think you guys really hit the nail on the head for what I really hope for and what the city really needs is comfortable space that is, fingers crossed, safe and then loose language around safe. But for younger people, for all ages, to really go and enjoy themselves, there aren't enough spaces. So I hope that part of the tradition definitely stays. So thanks for sharing you guys' stories.
And here's hope that the roof doesn't cave in again.
Oh my God.
Ever.
1995.
Oh man, if you don't know about the roof cave in, listeners, please just Google how the Huntridge closed.
Yeah. If you know, you know.
So let's shift gears. Let's go into the next subject of the day. Tony Hsieh's father has filed a lawsuit against former associates. So, money. The arguments around this man's money and properties is ongoing. So, David, can you fill us in?
Yeah, I mean, lawsuits, nothing more effective to shine a light on mythology, that's for sure. And this is yet another chapter. A lot of watchers on this one have been waiting for this particular part of the litigation to occur. We've seen in the past a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I mean a lot of people, dozens of people who say that Tony Hsieh owed them money based on scribblings on Post-it notes.
On a Post-it note.
Yeah, stuff like that. The biggest one to date was Tony Hsieh's assistant. She had sued the estate for millions and millions of dollars, I think like $7, $8, $9 million, something like that. She wound up having to pay the estate in the end over $500,000.
Uno reverse card right there.
Yeah. Which sometimes litigation does. But a lot of people have been saying, well, that was kind of chump change versus the people who made the most money being associated with Tony Hsieh, arguably, which were the head of his development wing and his attorney. And so now the lawsuit has kind of focused by the Hsieh family onto two people, Andrew Donner and Pui Premsrud, who we all just call Pui in the legal world. Both of them now are kind of under fire. Pui had sued the estate for what she said were owed legal fees and other things of that nature. Donner had kind of like faded into the background, but now both are back at the forefront. And the allegation is that Tony Hsieh paid $30 million more than the actual value of the Zappos headquarters. So he paid $70 million to Andrew Donner, who bought that building not terribly long ago from the city for $18 million. Donner made $52 million on it, and Tony Hsieh not only put what reportedly was $40 million into it in improvements, but had been paying outrageous rent for almost 10 years on it. So Donner came away with probably $100 million off that one transaction. That's what this litigation is all about. Underlying all that, of course, is the issue of what was Tony Hsieh's mental condition at the time of that transaction, because now a picture is circulating. It's not a nice picture. It's actually quite disturbing, showing a very emaciated Tony Hsieh with drug paraphernalia for nitrous oxide in his hands, looking extraordinarily gaunt, underweight, like I said, emaciated. And that, his family is saying, was his condition when he was entering into these contracts for tens of millions of dollars. And the family saying it should all be undone. So a lot of money, a lot of drama, and now a lot of light being shown on what was really going on, not just at the end of the whole Tony Hsieh adventure in Las Vegas, but maybe even back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm. I recently finished Happy at Any Cost, the book about Tony by Kirsten Grind and Catherine Sayre. And the Park City chapters are heartbreaking for the web of greed that just kind of coalesced around him. And it's like, who is advocating for Tony in this, clearly a state of substance, addiction, some mental health issues. So I'm wondering how many more shoes are gonna drop in this.
It does, Andrew, really make us look back at the entire time of the really relatively short period when the downtown project was doing lots of stuff in the downtown area. Vogue, I'm curious as to your take because, like I started saying, there's a lot of mythology here. What was your understanding of what was going on in downtown during the heyday of the Tony Hsieh era?
Lord. There's so many things, David. Before I answer your question, I feel very politician-y. Before I answer your question, I just want to note that Tony Hsieh didn't leave a will and he didn't have like a trust. And it doesn't make sense to me to be a person who amasses that much wealth and to not have a plan for where it goes, regardless of whether or not you have a partner or children. taking those steps and moving forward. And even for anybody, if you have X amount of wealth and the capacity to do so, talk to a lawyer, because I'm not a lawyer. But think about a living trust. Anytime someone passes away, the long legal battle that happens, that long probate court, is so taxing. It's so emotionally taxing on people. And I feel like I don't know how much the family gets to grieve. And I know it's been 2 years, but I'm just like, when do you get to put all of this away and move forward? And so that sucks.
And what they wind up having to do is exactly what's happening here, is that they now look back. And of course, they're focusing on the last few transactions when his mental health really did, and physical health really did seem to be, at that point of extreme vulnerability by all accounts.
I mean, like, I was at, Project Happiness stuff. Like, I spoke at one of those events inside the container park. And we used to hold slams inside the container park as well. They let us use that space for free. I read people's testimonies about their friendships with him and how he changed their lives. And so it feels like he was this larger than life person. And at the same time, we never got the other side of it, where was the pain, and why is this Happiness Project a thing? And it's because probably there's so much pain inside. But, I never knew about his friends and family, like who was close to him, who were his friends versus who's just there to take shots. And it feels like the saga never really ends. Like, all of us are really all up in Tony Hsieh's business. And that photo, I'm not really happy about that photo circulating. But David, do you think that there are any lessons that we as a city should learn from it?
I do. I don't think we will. But this whole concept of this kind of Willy Wonka figure who wanted to make an urban Burning Man downtown and was able, because he had so much money, engage in this sort of whimsical activity to, reinvent downtown, is belied by the fact that there is a business that was operating behind it. And that goes right back to this litigation now. People often will talk, we invested $350 million into downtown to make it great and wonderful and magical. Well, really, $200 million of that was a real estate portfolio, which was run by this guy, Andrew Donner. And they bought up hundreds of properties, 1,000 apartments, 1,000 motel units in the small downtown space, displacing thousands of people, while Andrew Donner was accountable to no one except for Tony Hsieh. And the answer to your question, Vogue, real easily is that, a magical let's turn downtown Las Vegas into Burning Man doesn't always accord with basic, thoughtful planning 101 for a city. It is a big lesson for the city to rely on a savior, to go that direction, to not look at the business transactions behind it, because there's always going to be people trying to make money. And now this lawsuit is going to perhaps, again, bust the myth of what was really happening at the time. And I hope and pray that city leaders, many of whom are still around and were involved in all of this, do learn the lessons and that we don't make these mistakes again. And again, whatever happened to the people who were in those thousands of apartments, all those motel units who were borderline security for housing and food, et cetera, is there a connection with the upsurge of homelessness in the downtown area? These are things that need to be explored and discussed one way or another. And, we shouldn't be sidetracked by the the theater of these type of things and the horrible, sad photos that we're seeing. But it is important for the city to be able to move on.
Let's talk about parties and other inappropriate places, you guys.
Nice transition. I like that.
Why, thank you.
I need a beer right now.
Well, you can have one on top of the rooftops if this shit goes through, David. So the county commission is considering having some beer gardens at apartment complexes, specifically off of Russell and 215. So where all those really nice apartment complexes are, like, I won't name names, but either way, off of Russell and 215. So they applied. They're like, can we get a beer garden? We want it to be exclusive to just people who live here. So, it's like, hey, move to our apartment complex. You get a gym, you get a pool, and you get a beer garden on top of the roof for you and your friends only. And it's not far-fetched when you think about, okay, it's near some shops, it's fancy schmancy, and it's wrapped into the amenities. But the the Clark County Commissioner, and he's also, I didn't know this, but William McCurdy is also the Liquor and Gaming Board Chairman. So he's working multiple spaces, but it says there's more to discuss. We can't just have apartment complexes running bars. We must have separation. Commissioner Marilyn Kirkpatrick says that if one apartment complex can do it, so say in one area, then what about the rest of the apartment complexes? What about people in her district and all the other districts? So saying, we can't say, oh, only some housing zone spaces are allowed to turn their roofs into bars. If it's going to be one, then everybody should have the right to.
She's saying it's setting precedent. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so I guess, the question for you two, rapid fire, let's do yay or nay votes. David, yay or nay?
I'm going to go yay.
Okay. Andrew, yay or nay?
A loud beer drunken yay.
Oh my God. What is wrong with you guys?
Vote yay or nay. What about you?
With amendments.
Yay asterisk? Yay asterisk or nay with amendments?
Nay yay with amendments.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yayish. Yayish.
Yeah.
I have asterisks too, but I guess on sort of broad principle, I just like the idea of mixing things up a little bit and introducing a bit of more modern, or maybe, not so modern urban thinking into the way we talk about, zoning in the Valley. Vegas is pretty much like a, car-based post-war city where everything is zoned by, big swaths, right? You got your residential, you got your commercial, you got your industrial. So I like the idea of, mixing that up a little bit. This sounds like it could be, reasonably done, arguably safer. People aren't driving to the bar, right? But it's within walking distance. Obviously, you'd have to account for kids and, the operating hours and things like that. But I love the idea. And, I hope they at least have a healthy discussion about it.
Yeah, noise and all that stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm much more in favor of it for it being from the get-go, so everyone who moves in knows that's what they're moving into, because there might be some people who don't want that to happen in their place because it might interfere with their quiet enjoyment of their residential area. But generally speaking, sure, why not? All the points that everyone makes seems to make sense. I mean, it's, as long as they've got good bumper guards up on the rooftop so no one's falling off, quick and easy stumble back to their apartment, and we don't have to worry about people on the road that condition. So I think it's innovative, it's interesting, and it actually opens up a broader conversation about what we call mixed use.
Exactly. Yeah. And beer is so good now. It's just gotten really good over the last 15 years.
I guess that is an interesting point. Like if it's just beer, sometimes it's not as bad as giving a hard, but I feel like they don't want just beer. I don't know what the parameters for the gardens are, but I think,
I want an immersive tequila experience in my driveway.
Shake me up, put salt on me. Good Lord. So I imagine, I think about as a kid, going to house parties, right? Like walking down the street, somebody's house is the party house and they are always having a gathering. And those were fun. And those were probably the safest parties I went to. They were better than clubs being in somebody's home. But I'm also just there are some neighborhoods where I don't think it would work. I think especially if it's people who say you have, my spouse works East Coast time. So, if it's loud and extra turnt and there's a whole gathering happening above our home, then that wouldn't work for us. So I think, David, I think your solution, your idea about people need to know beforehand as opposed to opening it up later, that's the thing. And I think there's something to be said about leaving home and going out, to go to something as opposed to everything is there. You're in your little zone and you never leave. If the bar is just upstairs, when do you meet new people? But also, I guess it lets you meet your neighbors. Do you all feel like we need more mixed use apartment complexes like these with eateries and entertainment, all that stuff just built in the Valley?
Yeah, to me, it just makes, good common sense. I think one factor that's important to kind of keep in mind is that this beer garden proposal, most importantly, it sounds like it's intended to serve, the immediate community, the apartment community, that's living there. I think the conversation turns a little bit if you have if the house next door converted to a PT's pub or something, and all of a sudden I'm dealing with major, traffic and people coming from outside the neighborhood and getting wasted. I think there's a way to kind of, position these kind of mixed use ideas so they're actually serving the immediate neighborhood, presumably, cutting down on traffic, encouraging people to walk or commute a short distance. So I think, the sort of community service principle is important to me as far as, making this a reality.
And when you and I were walking through the Arts District recently, Vogue, we saw some of this, proof of concept that there can be a nice blend and mix. And it does add to those things like walkability. I'm always for any kind of thoughtful development, zoning, tweaking, et cetera, that makes sense for our community and stuff that's less car-centric. I mean, I much rather see housing with retail on the first level than a car wash or a strip mall with 1,000 parking spots or any of the other sort of in and out. Nothing against our friends at the drive-through industry, but stuff where cars are coming and going constantly when we should be encouraging people to take ownership and stewardship of their neighborhoods and walk and bike and be healthy and like less reliant on car culture and more invested in building a place to be, right? With your neighbors that's inclusive and interesting and diverse, and mixed use developments absolutely are a key part of that puzzle.
Amen.
Yeah. And I think I like it as a ground level. I don't know why I don't like it on the roof, but the flip doesn't work for me. Like I could deal with the bar underneath, but I think above, something about that is like disruptive. And I also am worried about people falling.
Beer and heights, yeah, it's an innovative combo. But could you imagine though? I thought about this. Like, what if like just a random house on my street? What if it was operated as like a little coffee shop?
Yeah.
That, serve the immediate, so you're not dealing with like the beer and the alcohol kind of stuff. But I thought like that's not an outrageous idea if it, especially focused on people in the neighborhood, encouraging them to walk and interact. And that could like, just add something really cool to the sort of, generally suburban texture of Las Vegas.
Just has to be done right, and it has to be done thoughtfully, and it has to be somewhat consistent. And I think especially in downtown Las Vegas, they're having these conversations. But yeah, it is important to do all over the valley to find those right equations. It's not as easy as you think. We can't throw zoning out the window. We do want to support some of these, cottage type industries to be able to maybe operate a little closer to the residential areas. And so we'll see kind of how they fit that balance out as we move forward in all parts of the valley.
Yeah. So David and Andrew, this has been lovely. I feel like I learned so many things. It's been a great conversation. Thanks so much.
Always. Thank you.
Emotional roller coaster, but I'm glad we made it back to the station.
Oh my God.
Good talking with you too.
Yeah, let's go drink beer on the roof.
And on the first floor too.
Downstairs, y'all. That's all for today here on CityCast Las Vegas. Our lead producer is Sonia Cho Swanson. Our producer is Layla Muhammad. Our newsletter editor is Scott Dickensheets, and our hosts are David Figler and myself, Vogue Robinson. Music is by OG Moose, All the Kimonos, and Epidemic Sound. We record this show on the traditional homelands of the Nuwuvi, the Southern Paiute people. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend? Rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Take care.